Hi everyone, we're ready to get started. So, looks like most everyone is settled in. Okay. Is it ready now? Okay. Well, welcome. Hello. Good morning. How is everyone today? Good. My name is Jinny Sue. I'm the Executive Director of Awaaz. We want to welcome you to our UTSA partnered event, What Can I Do? It's a day of discussion, very, very informal conversation. We're going to hear from some amazing speakers today. I'm very excited. We have people from the Family Justice Center of Bexar County. We have folks here from the Peace Center here on campus at UTSA, and I'm talking about the morning panel. We also have some, let me just look at my notes really quickly. We're waiting on someone from American Gateways. Hopefully they will be here soon. And also we have Durga here who's going to inform everyone about Awaaz and the services that we provide here in San Antonio. How many people here know the statistics around domestic violence? I'm sure there are people here who are very well informed, but then there are others here who are learning about it for the first time. Well, I wanted to share some statistics just to give you an idea of why today is so important. In the United States, more than 10 million people are the victims of domestic violence every year. 1 in 4 women will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime, of some kind of violence, and 1 in 10 men. So this is not something that is limited to one type of population or another. If you are lucky enough to live your life without ever being the victim of violence, wonderful, but you will probably know someone in your life that is a victim. And so it's important for all of us to be informed and to understand what victims face and also to be allies to them. And that's really the purpose of today's panels, to inform you, to give you the tools you need so that if the situation does arise in your life, you will know what to do. Of course, it's a brief overview of those services and those considerations that have to come to mind when you're dealing with a victim, but hopefully this will spark some curiosity and you'll learn more and hopefully, possibly, volunteer with some of the amazing organizations that are here today, including Awaaz, and be an ally. Be someone that's invested in your community and making sure that we can work towards a future where everyone can be safe. Okay, I want to do some quick housekeeping items. If you need the restroom, you just go through either of these doors, and there's a hallway in between that leads to the restrooms. There's coffee and pastries back there. If you haven't had a chance to grab something to eat, feel free to do that. We are going to have lunch later this afternoon. Well, really at 11:30, so mid-morning to afternoon, and so you're welcome to stay for that as well, and that will be right before our afternoon panel. We're also going to finish the day with a survivor story and a quick activity before our closing remarks for the day. I wanted to also acknowledge some of the amazing people in the room today. I'm actually very new to Awaaz. I just joined as the executive director over the summer, so I'm still learning about everyone, but for those that aren't familiar, Awaaz is primarily run by a volunteer board, and that board is made up of some of the most amazing, wonderful, kind people I've ever met in my life. So if you are a member of the Awaaz board or the advisory board, please stand up so that we can honor you at this moment. So if you're happy with all of the things that you learned today and that you see today, it's not just something that you should thank me about. This is something that was a group effort. Absolutely, I have been given the freedom to do the planning because I have such amazing people supporting me. I also want to quickly give a little history about Awaaz. You know, we were founded in 2011 by 3 founding sisters, and one of them is here with us today. Tapasi, if you could please stand up so we can recognize you. I want to now also give honor to the UTSA Department of Political Science and Geography because they are the reason that we were able to secure this room and to plan this event so wonderfully. So thank you so much to UTSA and to the department. I'm going to invite Professor Mathur to come up here and please give some welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making the time to be here today. And a big thanks to Jinny for pulling in this huge event at a very short notice. So big thank you to you, Jinny. So I just wanted to actually go back a little bit because I started at UTSA in 2014. And among the first people I met at my orientation sessions over here was Dr. Lulu and his wife Tafshide, the founder member of Awaaz. And as I got to know her more and more and about her work, she would often ask me, why don't you come attend some of the Awaaz meetings? Why don't you join us for, a lunch or a dinner? So that's how I got to know a little bit more Awaaz over a period of time. But I was very hesitant, in a sense, to get involved with client services, etc. Because I was new at my job and also dealing with 100 students with 100 different problems is also quite stressful. So I thought I'll take my time and learn more about things as I go about, as I was new in the city. But as you can see, the title of the talk and the presentations today is What Can I Do? So as a faculty member at UTSA, the best way we could help was, in a sense, making sure that this university becomes a forum where we can debate, discuss, have conversations around basically domestic violence and dating violence issues. As a practitioner, as an educator, I've come across many instances over the years where students actually have come and expressed their grief, and within a classroom and even privately, about how they are being stalked, how they are suffering from violence at home, how they are unable to concentrate and focus on their studies. And so this issue becomes extremely important for us because it is not enough, I feel, that students just listen from professors in a classroom environment talking about human rights and violence in the terms of war, etc. But they actually listen to practitioners and learn from them about this particular subject. Jinny has very helpfully shared some of the statistics, and I'm sure you will hear more about them. But I feel that this becomes an even more important issue in an era of pandemics, where people are basically confined at home. Just 2 years ago, I remember sitting, teaching an online class, and there was this young man, and he was totally drunk, right, and constantly disrupting the classroom. And unfortunately, while he was totally drunk, he was taking care of 2 of his small children. And as he was taking care of his children, I could see the violence as he was talking, disrupting my classroom. I had to let go of my class. And I basically need to just focus on him so that I could, in a sense, calm him down, talk to him, so that the children would not get affected. And finally, after almost 1.5 hours, there were some family intervention services which came and took him to a rehab home. Apart from that, in an era of, we talk about digital warfare, etc., but there is also digital abuse. And sexting is a very particular form of digital abuse. So I hope, we can have some of the conversations around sexting harassment also, because we also see some of those discussions and concerns of students also. So Awaaz basically is a very, very strong NGO, and it is also seeking to recruit more young members who will advocate and generate awareness around these issues. I often find students who think about their careers in terms of becoming a lawyer. And so if becoming a lawyer is your field and your aspiration, but also working with practitioners will be an important area of work also. So I hope as we take forward these discussions, etc., we also have more internship opportunities for students at UTSA. So this forum, basically these workshops are being conducted so that we can give voice to students, to practitioners, who can be in touch with academics also, so that we can have a much more productive dialogue, so that we can actually create a much more harmonious, loving, and a peaceful society. So this is just a small endeavor in this respect, and I hope all of you will stay with us throughout the day, and we can actually have a good conversation. Thank you very much for being here, and look forward to your voices.
At this time, I'll invite the panelists to seat themselves at the table at the front. I'll just take a couple of minutes to set up here. by my watch, we still have 2 minutes, and we're still waiting on one panelist, so we're just going to wait until 10 o'clock before we start the panel. About safety and navigating systems when experiencing dating and domestic violence, including the education, legal, and immigration systems. We have some amazing panels that I alluded to earlier here today. We have Natalia Drelichman from American Gateways, Co-Director of Programs and Operations. Welcome. We have Benton Leachmen, Felony Prosecutor from the Bexar County Family Justice Center. We have Ashley Fitzgerald, Victim Services Campus Advocate from the Peace Center here at UTSA. And finally, Durga Suryadevara, right? Sorry, I'm working on it. Psychiatrist at Trinity University, but also one of our amazing Awaaz board members, and she will be speaking about Awaaz today. Thank you all for being here. Why don't we start out just going down the line and telling us a little bit about yourself, your organization, what you do. Just a brief introduction would be great. We'll start with Benton and work our way down.
Okay. I'm Benton Leachmen. I'm an assistant district attorney here in Bexar County. I work at the Family Justice Center, which is not attached physically to the district attorney's office. We're across the street. We're a separate building. But I've been at the DA's office for 7 years now. I've prosecuted everything from DWIs up to murder cases. I currently am working as the high-risk protective order prosecutor. So if we have a case where a victim is at a high risk of being killed or seriously injured, those cases go to me for review. And the reason we designate whether or not it's a high-risk case or not is because we put a priority of review on those cases. In my spare time, I like to play guitar. I'm a singer-songwriter. I have some music on iTunes if you like country-type music. Anyway, I'm really excited to be here today, and hope this stuff gives you some useful information.
Hello. Oh, hi. I'm Durga. I'm a psychiatrist, and I've been here in San Antonio, Texas for the last 20 years. I came with my middle child, when I was pregnant with my middle child, and I've been... Sorry, it's okay. I've been... Yeah, oh, okay.
Maybe we should switch her over.
I don't have time for yours.
There you go.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I've been here in San Antonio for the last 20 years, and I've been working in various settings. One of them is I've worked with Healthy Solutions Clinic, working with Center for Healthcare Services when I first moved here, and then for University Health Services. And after that, I started my private practice, and I've also been working with Trinity University I no longer have my private practice, but I'm still continuing with Trinity University, and I see patients there, and I love it there. So along the years, I have seen like a wide spectrum of cases, patients that have been influenced directly by interpersonal or domestic violence, or they have close friends who have been. And I've always been interested in this topic because even I've been affected by it as I was growing up. So one of the reasons I went into psychiatry was try to figure out how does that work? You know, when you come from a dysfunctional family, like what makes people tick? That was one of the things I really wanted to learn, and over the years, that's been part of what I feel passionately about, is helping people who are in those situations. And I've become involved with Awaaz, and just this year I've joined the board. And apart from this work, the things that keep me sane are, well, sometimes my family and my dog for sure, but I also do Indian classical dance called Bharatanatyam, and I've been doing that for a long time, and I love it. And I'm also learning music. I'm learning Hindustani music, and I have learned a little bit of Carnatic music as well. But those are the things, and your music as well, I'm sure, are the things that help alleviate our own, the things that we do, the work that we do, and the tensions that we take on when we deal with people in these really difficult situations. So, thank you. And do you want me to pass it down, or do you want to test her?
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Fitzgerald, and I am the Victim Services Campus Advocate with the UTSA Peace Center. So I started at the Peace Center this January, actually. I actually graduated from UTSA back in 2018 with my degree in Women's Studies. After I got my degree, I started out my career in sexual assault and domestic violence advocacy. And so I'm thankful to be able to come back to the community where I came from and to be able to support the campus. In my role as a campus advocate, I provide confidential services. And so it gives anyone who's needing assistance. We work with students, faculty, and staff the option to come and learn about what their options are when it comes to reporting, whether that's on or off campus, help with safety planning so they can feel safe whether they're on campus or at home. Also just with assistance with getting connected to any type of services, whether that's looking at housing barriers, food insecurity. We really try and work one-on-one with our survivors in any way that we can. Outside of this work to keep me sane, I'm a cat mom. I love my cat so much, and so he takes a lot of my time outside of work, honestly, and just delving into books and reading and being able to kind of detach into a different world helps a lot. Yes, escape.
We can trade pictures later.
If you could actually speak into the other one, just to check. Okay.
Hello. Hi everybody, good morning. Thank you so much for having me, Awaaz. Appreciate it. My name is Natalia Drelichman. I'm the co-director of programs and operations with American Gateways. I've been with the organization for 14 years, since 2009. I'm based in the Austin office, but we do have offices in San Antonio and Waco as well, and we serve 23 counties. We provide low to no cost legal services, immigration legal services to folks in the immigrant community, education and outreach as well. So this is just one component of my job. I also represent survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, individuals who've survived crime here in the United States and also in their home countries. And so this is something near and dear to my heart, and I'm happy to give you all some more information about how you can get involved with our organization or just working with survivors generally. I started at American Gateways in 2009 as a VAWA attorney, working very closely with Sahaley, now ASTA. I see Samira here in the audience. We've worked together on many cases. So I have a long history of working with survivors of crime, and it's something that I feel very passionate about. Over time, I've become the individual in the office who primarily works with UTSA cases. So I do trainings for law enforcement, I do trainings for social service providers, making sure they understand the importance of cultural competency when you're engaging with survivors of crime. So yes, this is something I feel very passionate about, and I'm excited to share my knowledge with y'all. And I'm sure there are some folks who know just as much as me in the audience too, so I'm excited to be able to be here and share more as well.
Thank you so much. And you may have noticed we have a last-minute addition here. I want to introduce our Domestic Violence High-Risk Coordinator for the Family Justice Center, Rosanne Pizano. So we're just doing a quick introduction if you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience.
Is this okay? Okay. Good morning. My apologies for my tardiness. Usually October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, is a very busy month for our office. So we try to make sure that we're available, but that kind of spreads us a little bit thin, so my apologies. But I'm very happy to be here. I've worked with the Bexar County District Attorney's Office in various capacities as a victim advocate. I'm going to kind of set off my age a little bit. I started in 1999 under the Hilbig administration. I was assigned to the felony court, working in the criminal child division. That was the 379 and 437. So in probably about 5 years after that, I switched over to working with domestic violence. We had a VAWA grant. I heard we were talking about VAWA a little bit. And the VAWA grant allowed the district attorney's office to provide crisis services to victims that were identified as high risk. And so what we would do is we would go out into the community, mainly through the substations, and we would assist victims of domestic violence that were needing protective orders in particular. And so one of the substations that I covered, well, several of the substations I covered was North, South, East, Crew substation, and then we had another advocate that would cover West substation and the Battered Women Children's Shelter. And so through this format, it really brought awareness and how important and the demand and the volume of high-risk cases that were being identified. So fast forward, I spent a few years working overseas. I lived in Misawa, Japan, and I was able to introduce their domestic violence high-risk program to the Air Force Base. And then I took another 2-year contract and worked in South Korea, where I was able to provide victim advocacy services again. Once again, it was family violence. And then I came back and I worked a short time with Family Violence Prevention Services as their legal clerk, serving residential and also non-residential clients. And then I circled back and I came back home to the DA's office, where I will complete my 20 years at the end in a couple of months, which I don't plan to retire. I plan to stay there. I feel that I still have there's still a lot of work to be done. But I am so happy to be here and see so many faces. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm impressed to have so many folks from the community here to talk about domestic violence today and how to navigate these systems. So I'm going to start off by, this is probably something directed for Ashley, but I'd love to hear from other people's perspectives as well. If you're a student, we're here at UTSA, so let's talk about it from the student perspective. If you are a student and you are the victim of domestic violence or family violence or intimate partner violence, and there are all these different services available, but you don't know anything about them, what should be the first step?
Our goal is for students or anyone on campus
Okay, try now.
Hello.
Oh, there you go. Should I repeat the question? Did everyone hear it? Yes? Okay, go ahead, Ash.
Our goal for all of our students is to know where they can go, and there are barriers. They may not have someone that they can automatically go to and trust or know how to ask for support. And so that's where the Peace Center tries to come in, with making the college campus aware that they can come to us. With being confidential, it allows for individuals to know what their options are, know that it's okay to ask whatever questions they have. There's no judgment to that. And so we hope with that space we can help with being a liaison if someone does decide to make a report to law enforcement or to our Title IX offices, and know that they're not alone. They're not alone through that journey, whatever it may look like for that survivor.
So actually, I know there's a difference between disclosing and reporting. Would you be able to give us a little bit of a background on those two terms and what they mean?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So disclosing could be an individual, for instance, a student going to a professor, speaking with them. A disclosure could be the student mentioning that they are in their relationship is dating violence relationship or has been affected by domestic violence. So that would be seen as a disclosure, because we do have mandated reporters, such as professors on campus. It's then their responsibility to make that report to Title IX and to law enforcement.
And once a student goes to the Peace Center, can you give us an idea of what sort of services, the breadth of services that are offered by the Peace Center?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a wide range of services. Not one client is going to be the same when we meet with them. So aside from going over what those reporting options may look like, it's a deeper level in seeing what do they need to get them through right now to be successful as a student, and so they can reach their goals and have the support that they need. So their immediate needs may be housing for assistance. If someone has been assaulted in their apartment, we're able to assist with looking at terminating their lease agreement without affecting their credit history. That way they can have that safety plan of being able to move, being able to start over if they need to. And also another program or service that we provide is we do have a student emergency fund through our student assistance services. So being able to help students how we can financially to be able to make that transition, whatever type of support that may look like as well, with food insecurity, helping with any type of moving costs. Also when it comes to safety planning, if we need to look at security alarms or changing locks on your doors, there's funds available to help with that.
Thank you. I think we're going to try and rearrange the mics a little bit so that we have no feedback issues. So we're going to take them off the stand, is that right? Yeah. Okay. So if you don't mind taking them off and just holding them, that is supposed to help with that. Do we have a good mic? Is not? I'm sorry?
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do.
It's just for the Q&A. If you all wanted to pass one around, we're gonna have to take one.
Right. Sorry about that.
Just keep it at the table.
Yeah, it's not, they're all on just, yeah, you don't need to did that? Yeah, it's just.
So with the Peace Center, just to stay on this subject, are there limits to the types of cases that you will help with? For instance, if something is happening off campus, is that included in the types of cases you will help with? If it's involving a student and a non-student, will you help with those situations? Could you give us an idea about sort of the kinds of cases that you take at the Peace Center?
Yes, of course. So we're not going to turn anyone away when it comes to services. So with the Peace Center, whether it may have been domestic violence, dating violence, any sort that took place on campus or off campus, within the family, intimate partner, we'll provide that support. With the Peace Center, we do work with students, faculty, and staff We don't work with former students, but that doesn't mean that we won't make sure that they're connected to the resources or support that they need. So at that point, we'll look out to other advocacy groups in the community who may be able to provide that additional amount of support that they need. But we even if we don't have all the services available at the Peace Center, that's when we can look out to outside agencies and providers. When it comes to sexual violence, if we can reach out to the Rape Crisis Center for a 24-hour advocate to go to the hospital and really be able to fill in that need. That way we can make sure that no one feels alone throughout this whole process.
Fantastic. I'm sorry, I was in the rush getting set up here, so I forgot to introduce my co-facilitator. This is Anabella Saenz. She is a psychology major here at UTSA, graduating in December. So I'm going to hand it over to her to ask some questions as well.
Hi, good morning. I would like to know what are the limits of confidentiality in the services?
So the limits of confidentiality, if anyone, if there's threats to harm oneself, others, and any concerns or suspicion of child abuse, elder abuse, outside of that, our services are confidential. That's the only limitation.
And can you explain what Title IX is and what does that mean here at UTSA?
Yes, so our Title IX office, or Equal Opportunity Service, they work with cases regarding discrimination of any kind, sexual violence, dating, domestic violence, and stalking and harassment. And so with the cases that they handle, they also provide the student support through their complaint process. Once a complaint is submitted to their office, they have investigators that will look at the information, reach out to, they refer to survivors as complainants, and then they'll look at the respondent party, who the allegations are against. So at that point, they'll reach out to both parties. They also may interview any witnesses who may have witnessed any type of witnesses to the event. And at that point, they'll perform a formal investigation and look at what type of sanctions may need to be made at that point. But they also make support available to the students. We work very closely with Title IX. And that way our advocates are able to go with students if they need to the appointment. Also work as a liaison. It can be overwhelming having to reach out to these offices alone, so we want to provide that support also. They're also able to provide supportive measures, so reaching out to students, professors, or as far as absences to make sure that that's not negatively affecting the student and their success at the university.
Before I move on to the next set of questions, do you all work together in any capacity? Do you work with American Gateways or with Family Justice Center at any point?
I've referred to Family Justice Center before. I haven't worked directly.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Well, that's a great segue into the next set of questions I have for the Family Justice Center. I went to your website before I came here today, and there's a wealth of information on there. It's a little bit hard for me to grab onto all the different things that are offered by the Family Justice Center, so can you give us a brief overview of the types of needs that are met and the services offered?
Rosanne, I think you ought to take this one.
Thank you, Benton. So we have a variety of services. I'll start off with Catholic Charities. Catholic Charities is one of our on-site partners. They have a grandfather that is able to assist with child care while the individual is seeking services. And so this is pretty helpful because in the past, historically, we didn't have that service, and so it was kind of uncomfortable for the victim to come in trying to seek services, and they didn't have childcare, and so a lot of times they were faced with either not getting services, or they would have their child with them, and having to re-victimize not just themselves but their child as well. So now we do have Catholic Charities that is able to assist with that. One of the other services that we do have is we have child therapy. This is through the San Antonio Police Department. We have 2 child therapists. We also have a detective. We have a officer. We have a crisis management service provider, and she's more of like a social worker. So they can assist with either filing police reports, filing charges. They're on-site partners as well. So this is kind of also a nice service to be able to provide, because in the past, before the Family Justice Center was multidisciplinary professionals all under one roof, what we used to do is we would have victims that would come in seeking services. Generally, it was mainly for protective orders. That's probably one of the most popular services that is sought after. And what we would do is we would make recommendations of services for the victim. It could be counseling, it could be making police reports, sending them to the police substation, it could be a variety of services, and we would kind of have a form that we would check off the box. But this would involve the victim having to turn around, go to each and every single, whether it's a substation, whether it's going to an actual counseling office, and we, our experience from that is it wasn't really well received. A lot of times, we would lose the client's interest. They wouldn't be able to fulfill that. They would, they were stuck for a variety of reasons: transportation, childcare. It could be a number of reasons. So fast forward, having everything under one roof, such as SAPD, being able to assist with the police reports and filing charges, having childcare. We also have a Dream Center. We call it the Dream Center, and this is made up of a multiple of social workers, licensed social workers that are able to assist with crime victims compensation applications, which can also help with relocation. It can help with reimbursement for any financial loss, a number of things. Utility assistance. They also have a financial literacy class that they can assist with for financial empowerment. They help with looking for work, for employment. We have a food pantry that they can also seek, which has some, it's a small food pantry, but they have hygiene items, baby care items, things of that nature that they can also, they're also there for the victims. And then we also have, I'm sorry, I'm trying to play this in my head. I usually kind of have a little slide that I can pick off.
I did warn you, there's a lot.
There's a lot. We also have Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, which is also one of our on-site partners. They are able to assist with some of our protective orders that are considered conflicts of interest. And you may ask, why would there be a conflict of interest? And I won't go into a huge amount of detail, but I'll just kind of give the basic. Sometimes we'll have victims that may have be on probation, parole, or they could have their own pending charges. And being the district attorney's office handles the protective order side of the house, it would be a huge conflict for us to represent and also prosecute that person. So we do that as more of a protection for them, so that way they have the ability to be able to seek out their own legal services if that is their situation. So in those cases, we do have Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, so that way they can still have services there with the Family Justice Center. It's just going to be through a different agency, which is our on-site partner as well. So nobody gets turned away. We also have, in addition to Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, we have 2 licensed counselors, and this is for adult counseling. They do group, and then they also do one-on-one. We are not insurance-based, so there's no fee for our services. There's no limit on how many sessions a person can have. It's unlimited. as long as they have completed intake through our office, they can always come and have counseling. There is some more just kind of a general information that is taken from the person, but mainly it's just that way we can have stats done so we can keep up our numbers, because a lot of our programs are grant funded. And then in addition to our counselors, we have the biggest on-site partner, which is going to be the Bexar County District Attorney's Office, the Protective Order Unit, which is where we fall under Mr. Leachmen and myself. We are Bexar County District Attorney employees. And then we also have in-house, we have an in-house protocol for high-risk cases, and that would be any victims that are identified as high risk. So when a client comes in for services, the first thing that they will do is they will complete intake with our central intake unit. They will be set up to meet with a crime victim liaison who will conduct several assessments with that person. One of the assessments that is administered is the Jackie Campbell Danger Assessment. It's the Felony scoring tool. Is anybody familiar with the Jackie Campbell? I see one hand way back there. Two. I see a few. Awesome. We that is one of the assessments that we use as a guideline. For those that are familiar with the scoring toolkit, they are the victim is asked a series of questions. Some of the questions, I'll give you a few examples. One of them is, was there a firearm used? Has a weapon been used? Do you feel that this individual is capable of killing you? Were you pregnant during the time of the assault or during the time of the incident? Were you strangled? Were you sexually assaulted? Those are some of the example of the questions that is asked. There's several others. Depending on how those questions are answered by the victim, it is given a number. Anything that is 18 or above is going to set off an in-office high-risk protocol. And so one of the programs that I monitor, which is one of the newest programs, is the Domestic Violence High-Risk Program. And what we do is we look at those numbers that are coming through, anything 18 or above, and Mr. Leachmen is the felony attorney that also reviews these cases as they're coming through. But what we're looking at is we're identifying those high-risk behaviors. And we want to make sure that we are able to assist the victims with expedited services, so that way we can hopefully have a temporary protective order filed on their behalf within 72 hours. And I think I covered all the programs that you have? Yeah. Okay, I think I covered them all.
If you didn't, they've got most of them.
And we've got questions. If someone decides to report and then they later change their mind, what happens next?
Oh boy. Okay, so it depends on whether or not you're talking about a criminal prosecution or a protective order prosecution. Because one's in civil court and one's in criminal court, and the way those are handled are somewhat different. So for me, because I'm a protective order prosecutor and I'm seeking civil protective orders in district court, if a victim ultimately decides that they no longer want to proceed with a protective order case after I've already filed it, we will go through basically a series of questions with that person in person to make sure that the victim is not being coerced or threatened into not seeking the protective order at that time. But generally speaking, we do have some exception cases that come up every once in a while. But if the victim doesn't want that order in place, we let them decide what's in their best interests, because we don't want to create a court's order that they're going to have to follow that's going to put them in a position where they feel like it's worse off for them. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes we don't want them to go back to this person, but they feel that they've changed, maybe they've agreed agreed that they're going to go get some sort of therapy together, and we're going to let them decide what's best for them at the end of the day, but we can only warn them so much that it may not be a good idea. As for a criminal prosecution, the goal is somewhat different. So if you have a domestic violence case where, say, a victim's no longer cooperative and they want to return to a relationship with their perpetrator because financial reasons, maybe they still love this person and they just want the case to be dismissed. Just because they want the case to be dismissed doesn't necessarily mean that the district attorney's office is going to drop those charges. And the reason for that is because in addition to the victim's safety and the victim's needs, one of the considerations that a district attorney's office prosecutor needs to consider is the safety of the community. So we may have a case where the victim wants to return to a relationship with this person who's battered them. However, if you go look at their criminal history, this person has battered multiple people in the past. He's going to continue to do this, and the only way that there's going to be an increase in the punishment and an increase in the severity of his actions moving forward is if he's held accountable. If we don't have a victim's cooperation in the case, it does make it a lot more difficult to prove, but all of those are the types of things that a prosecutor has to keep in mind whenever deciding whether or not to proceed on a criminal prosecution for a non-cooperative victim battery type of case. Is that kind of what you were?
Yeah.
Okay.
If someone does not want to report, what are some options that are available to them?
If someone doesn't want to report? Okay. So, as far as, I guess it depends on what you mean by reporting. So if you mean by reporting going to the police and filing an official report, we don't require that as, one of the things that's necessary to seek a protective order, okay? However, if you want to have this person criminally prosecuted, law enforcement does have to be the agency that generates the initial filing for the case. We are not the inception of any case. But as far as reporting to a police officer, that's not something you need to seek a protective order.
And if I can just add, in order to receive services at the Family Justice Center, there does not have to be a police report on file. In many instances, a lot of times the first step is just calling and just getting the information. What is involved, what is necessary, what happens next. Because that's all information that is pertinent. We recognize that the victim has been not just tormented, but has been controlled and manipulated. And the last thing we want to do is take their voice away, take their ability to be able to make their own choice of what's best for them. So a lot of times our conversations are just explaining what options are available to them, what services. So counseling, childcare, if they just want to come in and just talk, that's fine. Just to explore what happens next. They can always come in.
Or also ask a question to the Peace Center as well. What are some options for that service?
Yes, so even if the student does not want to report, we can still help with academic accommodations, as I mentioned earlier. So if that student may need some more time when it comes to assignments being time or absences, we can act as a liaison to reach out to that professor. Also, there doesn't need to be a report made to help that individual when it comes to terminating their lease at their apartment. We're able to send a letter and work with property management directly to help. Also, we can still get them connected to services on campus, whether it be Wellness 360 for clinical or mental health assistance. Honestly, the services that we provide are going to be the same, whether they do report or not.
So if someone does want to file a police report and go through a criminal prosecution, can you give us an idea, what is the timeline like? Are we talking about months? Are we talking about years? I know there's the high risk
sort of expediting, but for a typical case that's not high risk, what are we looking at?
So for a protective order case, that's generally looking at a period of maybe a couple months. Sometimes in the more complicated cases, like a case where you have a child sexual assault victim, those cases may go on for several months. But generally, the initial filing of the case is going to be 20 days from when they come to sign their affidavit that's the supporting document for their allegation. After that 20-day period has ended, depending on whether or not that individual has been served with the civil court orders for that case, then if they are served within the first 20 days, then we will usually give them up to 2 to 3 settings to try to retain their own counsel. If they can't retain somebody in that amount of time, then we stop agreeing that we're going to keep resetting the case, because we can only give them so much time before we need to have the order move forward. So if you take it on average, I'd say the average protective order case is going to last about 2 months, but it can be much longer. As far as a criminal prosecution goes, a criminal prosecution can be years before the case is actually adjudicated. And that has to do with court timing, that has to do with discovery processes, that has to do with plea bargaining, and because criminal courts are generally speaking, they're not. They have lots of crimes that they have to cover, right? Protective orders get kind of a special status in civil court because there is sort of an emergency need to the nature of the case. But all criminal cases, they reset the cases for months at a time. So each setting, you may not be back in court for 90 days. Whereas with a protective order case, there's going to be something happening every 20 days. So it naturally is just much quicker.
I'm going to shift focus a little bit and let's talk about some other issues that can impact whether or not a victim will report or go through the process. So let's talk about if someone is facing immigration issues. I'd like to direct my questions to Natalia. Let's start out. What are some of those unique challenges that an immigrant might face when they are a victim of domestic violence?
Yeah, so, excuse me, it depends on a lot of things, but I would say what I've seen the most is fear, language barriers. If an individual can't speak the language, they can't access services, and so that's a huge factor. Not understanding systems, not understanding who to go to. If they do report, what would happen, and then also believing whoever the abuser is or the perpetrator. They often are lied to, manipulated to believe that if they do report, they'll get deported. And sadly, I have seen cases where that has happened, where an individual has reported, has been detained by immigration, and then we step in to advocate and try to see if we can get them released and get their situation resolved. And so, obviously, particularly in Texas, I think that is an issue for folks where people go to report and then they do come in contact with law enforcement, and obviously that's very scary. If you're somebody who's not from here, you don't understand the language. If you're involved with somebody who maybe speaks the language and they can advocate for themselves and they're the abuser, the perpetrator in the case, they're going to be, maybe manipulating law enforcement to believe their side of the story, and so I've seen that as well. Utilizing the immigration system as a form of control. I sadly have had cases where I had a deaf client who her partner withdrew her application 6 times, reported her while I was representing her to immigration. And so obviously the stress, the anxiety that creates. Okay. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'll have somebody come replace that.
Oh, no problem.
Apologies. So we will not be doing karaoke later.
That's why I came. Yeah, so this one doesn't seem to be on. Oh, there we go. Hi. Okay. So I think there are a lot of factors others, but I would say most of my clients, when they come to us, if they haven't reported, just so you know, all immigration cases do not require reporting. There are only certain types of cases that do. Are you familiar with the U visa? Heard of the U visa? Okay, so that's for survivors of crime. Certain crimes apply. They're called qualifying crimes. Domestic violence and sexual assault are crimes that we see a lot for folks who are eligible. You have to be a survivor of a crime in the United States. So in that case, that does require reporting. But I think similar to the Family Justice Center, folks come to us before they report because they just want to know what their options are. And so we kind of lay that out for them and kind of ease their minds. I think depending on the jurisdiction also, there are, degrees of anxiety. If you're in a rural jurisdiction, so a lot of the folks we work with are in Killeen, Bastrop, Hayes County, and so they feel maybe a little bit more uncomfortable, less services out there, less culturally competent services out there, and so if there are language barriers, that's like a huge hurdle for many of our clients. But if you're in San Antonio, Austin, it's a little bit, that's not perfect, but there are more programs in place and services in place to help a survivor.
So besides the U visa, are there other protections in place when you're dealing with someone that is facing some immigration issues?
Yeah, great question. So I think, again, it's case by case. So we have the U visa, which I explained is for survivors of crime in the United States. You have to be a victim of certain crimes. You don't have to have a relationship with that individual in order to be eligible. The T visa is another crime for survivors of human trafficking, very similar to the U visa, except obviously narrower, just for survivors of trafficking, requires reporting. There's also the Violence Against Women Act, VAWA, not just for women, for everyone, and it is a protection for individuals who they don't have to report, right? But there has to be a qualifying relationship. So there has to be maybe a marriage or some sort of relationship with an individual who would typically be able to petition for you in the traditional kind of, it's called an I-130 petition. I don't know if y'all are familiar with it, but it's if you have a relationship, like a familial relationship with somebody. And so that's a barrier for folks because a lot of people aren't married, right? Or they're not a citizen, they're not married to a citizen, they don't have someone who can petition for them. But if you are eligible, great, you don't have to report, you just have to meet a standard that's called any credible evidence that basically you could even just submit witness affidavits and things like that, which I think is very attractive to an individual who's been isolated, doesn't have access to a lot of the typical ideal forms of evidence. And so a lot of what I do is helping an individual get that stuff together. And then there's asylum, that's for individuals who are fleeing their home country. They are victims of crime abroad, also doesn't require any sort of reporting. And then within those forms of relief, primarily U visa, T visa, and VAWA, there's something called VAWA confidentiality. That's a form of protection that exists. So remember that example of that deaf client that I said who had her petition taken, withdrawn multiple times? We helped her apply for VAWA. We sent a letter to San Antonio, the field office, immigration, and said, hey, this woman's a survivor. Don't listen to anything anybody says if they call in to try to report her, because, especially if it's the abuser. So it's a form of protection that exists for someone who's filing under these humanitarian forms of relief as a survivor, that basically a perpetrator can't call and say this person's lying. They have to corroborate it. There has to be more involved, and they can't disclose anything. So if you're a VAWA petitioner and you call the 1-800 number, they won't help you because of VAWA confidentiality. You have to know the service center, you have to have that information, because it's a protection for survivors, so that the perpetrator doesn't have access to their case or anything like that, and it affords them confidentiality in terms of what they're applying for, because that's also used as a form of manipulation. I have been subpoenaed by the defense in criminal cases to talk about what my client's intention was when they filed for the U visa, because they use that as a form of manipulation to basically say the only reason you're doing this is for immigration status, even though the U visa was created and the T visa was created to protect victims from deportation. And so that's what it was for, but they're still using it to manipulate the court to say basically this person's lying because they're trying to get papers, and sadly it works sometimes. If the person doesn't know how to, I had to ask for what's called an in-camera review and just meet with the judge and review the file, and it was terrifying for me as an advocate because I knew a lot of information, and I had, thankfully, attorney-client privilege, but still I was required to talk about certain aspects of the case because of all that is required with discovery in the criminal case. I'm sure you can speak to that much more than I can. But so I think there are protections in the immigration context, but they obviously have to be eligible. And so that's, I think, a major hurdle for a lot of my clients is they're not eligible for relief for some reasons. Thankfully, because of how long we've been around as an organization, a lot of folks already come to us knowing that they're eligible. We get a lot of law enforcement referrals. We get referrals from the public defender's office. Like, folks know when a person's eligible, and I think that's because all the amazing advocacy that has been done around crime victim cases. But yeah, I still think it's obviously a work in progress.
So drawing from my own sort of experience, not me personally, but working with various clients over the years, we've come across that situation where an abuser is withholding a passport, or in other cases, threatening deportation, which you alluded to. What is your advice to a survivor that is facing that?
Yeah, so in the context of withholding documentation, I've sadly seen that in a lot of my cases, and so thankfully in the immigration context, you can get copies of documents. You don't have to submit originals, but then helping that person advocate with the respective consulate to be able to get their documentation situated is sometimes super hard. So I don't have a perfect answer. It honestly just depends on the country of origin. We have a strong relationship with some consulates, and we're able to advocate in that context. But I think when a person doesn't have documents, you can't enroll your children in school. You can't do simple things that I think we take for granted every day. Being able to rent an apartment. I just had a client who came to me who lost all of their documents because they had to flee a situation. And they're like, I have nothing. I don't even know where to start because I don't have a document to show the consulate to say, this is me. And so then we sometimes help draft power of attorneys to help them give somebody power of attorney in home country to get the documents from there. Folks are super savvy. WhatsApp is an amazing tool. People send tons of stuff through WhatsApp. And a copy is enough for immigration, but obviously for the more kind of engaging with the other bureaucratic systems that exist in our society, they need original documents. And so that is a challenge for many of my clients. So that's like an answer, not answer, but I can go into more detail if you want me to.
If there are any children involved in these cases, are there any special considerations and ways that may handle a potential abduction?
Yeah, so thankfully we have great relationships with organizations like TRALA, also Volunteer Legal Services. We don't have a family lawyer on staff on our team, we're just immigration, and so we have to refer out for family lawyer things, but we do advise our clients in a protective order, for example, put a little note about getting, making sure that you have full legal custody during the time of the protective order. There, you can do supervised visitation to make sure that the client or the children aren't abducted. I've sadly seen that happen in a couple of cases, and clients follow in a couple of cases, and then the advocacy that happens afterwards. There are federal laws that prevent international child abduction, so you can criminally prosecute an individual. If you want to know, it's 18 U.S.C. 1204. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I looked it up before I came here. Yeah, I don't do that work, but I know that there are federal laws that prosecute them. There's also the Hague Convention, but that, that individual, the country, it has to be a party to the Hague Convention in order for that actually to work. So if they're not, then... So I know that there are stories and awful stories where the prosecution has happened, but the children are still over there because we can't get them back. So thankfully I have not seen that in my time at AG, but I think it has happened. And so I would advise my client to do what they can to get a family lawyer in place, and a family lawyer who is culturally competent, and a family lawyer who understands domestic violence issues, and can advocate for that individual to get a SAPSR, which is like basically a custody agreement, so that they can get full custody of the children if possible, if not primary legal custody, so that they can say, you can't leave the country with my kid, and they can make all those decisions, get passport possession. That's harder than you would think, especially if you're dealing in a situation where one party, the abusive party, has more money, which is, all my clients are 200% below the poverty guidelines, so they have zero money, can't pay a private attorney, typically, and so that's a huge hurdle for folks. And then, obviously, I said the protective order as well. Yeah, I think if they have something in home country, make sure it's enforceable here, which is a whole other legal process as well. And then putting alerting the schools, making sure that there's if there's a protective order, and make sure it's on file in every space, and utilizing it as a tool. I think a lot of clients that I have just are like, oh, I have a protective order, but they don't know how to use it. They don't realize they can call 911 if they're getting phone calls from the person that is the aggressor in the relationship. They don't understand that if that person is within a certain distance, that they can call. Facebook messages, they can call. So I think there are a lot of little tools, but no perfect system.
I wish we had more time to go into more detail about all these different things, but I think one of the things that we've gathered from the panelists thus far is the intersection of all these different agencies and organizations. One victim may know about American Gateways, another might know about the Family Justice Center, and that's why we need this sort of patchwork of agencies and organizations to serve the community. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn now to Awaaz to learn more about the gap that they fill and what they do for the community. So please, Durga, tell us about Awaaz.
Yes. Can you hear me? Is it on? Is it on? No. Okay. Now it's on. Now it's on. Yes. Thank you, Jinny, and thank you all so far. There's been wonderful information coming our way. Well, Awaaz has been established in 2011, and even before that, I think Tapasi and her friends have been doing work. Tapasi, Mishra, would you mind standing up? Uma's here.
Yeah, we had started. Oh, yeah. Oh, you want me to say so? So we, probably in the early 90s is when we had our India Association, we began a women's forum. So we called it Mahila Sammelan, and that is where we began to talk about women's issues, not just DB, but also other kinds of empowerment issues, And that's when we had people from Saheli come and talk to us. They were regular guests, and so so we've done our own little, in our own private way. We've done our working with survivors of domestic violence, and then of course Tapsi took it and moved on with it.
So we basically became like a bridge between San Antonio and Austin. We were working very closely with Saheli. I give Saheli all the credit for inspiring us, setting us up. Samira and my sister-in-law worked at that time with them. So we became like a bridge, and we started realizing through Saheli that we have clients in San Antonio. I mean, there are survivors in San Antonio. We didn't even know. And that's how we got started. And then after a while, Saheli said, please, can you open your own organization?
For those that are not familiar with Awaaz, I don't know that it has been said in the past, I apologize. We serve the South Asian community and and Saheli, which is now known as AFSA, also serves the broader Asian community. So we're talking about culturally competent services. So, Durga, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was exactly how I was going to take it, is start with the cultural side of things. So South Asian, what does that mean? I do have slides. Do we want to use them?
Sure.
I know sometimes it helps to have a little bit of visual. So, first of all, I have to reiterate that it is entirely volunteer-led. Up until now, we have our executive director, Jinny, also helping with this. But I'm going to just stand up, if that's okay. And we serve. So what does South Asian mean? Do you have to be directly from one of the South Asian countries like Pakistan or India or Bangladesh? Or no. If you're someone whose culture is affiliated with those countries, or if your parents or grandparents have come from that and you identify with that culture, it's still considered that you are from South Asia. So we help with anyone who's dealing with domestic violence situations, interpersonal violence situations, immigration issues from those countries, and they're in a violent situation. We help people from that whole region. And so these are some of the countries that we have serviced, and basically we really want to promote awareness of domestic violence. You know, people have, as I was growing up, sometimes people have this mindset like, oh, it doesn't happen in our communities. We come from very educated, you know, like everyone who's an Indian or Pakistani immigrant here, they're like highly educated, and they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're business people. Things like this can't happen there, can it? And the answer is, of course, it's a rhetorical question. Absolutely, yes. It happens across all socioeconomic backgrounds. And the other thing that Awaaz does is we provide culturally appropriate assistance, and we serve individuals all across San Antonio and sometimes even in the surrounding areas. And we do work closely with other organizations as well. And the milestones we've talked about when it was established in 2011, and then over the years it started to grow. And now in 2023, we do have a strong team. We have Tapsi Mishra, who's the founder, still on working in community outreach. And we have Bharti, who is the treasurer. Our president, Madhu, is, where is she? She is taking care of some business. Yes, she stepped out. And client services, we have Dr. Mankasina here, and Jinny, of course, and I'm a board member. Jane is a new board member, and Purvi is also a new board member in the back. Can we have the next slide? So our approach is pretty much multi-pronged, but the main two things are advocate for our clients, advocate for survivors who are in this really troubling situation, and also to educate our communities. You know, we have various organizations that are South Asian organizations, India Association, and we just really need to let people know that this service is here, that we do help clients, that we do help survivors, and it's done in an anonymous fashion. Please do reach out and ask for help if you need it. And so that's part of what we do, and everything is confidential. Can we have the next slide? We have a 24-hour helpline. So the difference between a hotline and helpline is basically when you call this number, if you hopefully it will be answered, but for whatever reason we're not able to answer it right away, you can leave a confidential voicemail, and your call will be returned within 24 hours. And once that's made, then the needs of the person are assessed, and then we have various services, and we do work with the Family Justice Center and Texas Rio Grande, and we have grants that Jyotsna, I have not mentioned Jyotsna Sharma's name, but she's our secretary, and she also applies for grants, and we've had some wonderful grants recently, especially. So we have, because of those grants, we're able to give our clients financial support, whether it's with housing or legal services or therapy, counseling sort of thing. We have that as well. Can we have the next slide? And these are some of the languages that we have people who speak these languages on, who volunteer. Bengali, Gujarati, Kannada, Tamil, Urdu, Bhojpuri, Hindi, Oriya, and Telugu. Next slide, please. And our the organizations in San Antonio that we have worked with, obviously the San Antonio Police Department, Family Violence Prevention Services, Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid, and our sister organization. We have, how many people are here from AFSA today? Please raise your hand. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. There's Daya of Houston and Chapman of Dallas, also our sister organizations in Texas. Next slide. This again talks about the client services, which we've all already covered. And yeah, like we have community outreach, we have tables set up at various events such as City Diwali, and workshops, presentations such as today, working with UTSA, thank you. And next slide. I believe this is pretty much the end. We do a lot of cultural education, like what is the difference between someone who comes from our cultural background, South Asian cultural background, where there can be a lot of traditional households where it's patriarchal, and people believe that the man should have more power, or actually has more power, and the power balance is unequal, right? Like we have to deal with that a lot, and how do we handle those situations? That comes our way a lot. So it's a fine line, right, between differentiating between what's culturally appropriate and what's actual abuse. And a lot of times, victims come with ideas in their heads that, well, maybe it's just the way when there's actual manipulation of finances, for example, going on, or their rights have been taken away, or they're being isolated from their friends and their family. They don't see it as abuse because maybe they're thinking like, well, that's just part of our culture, right? That's just how things are for us. And so not only do we have to educate the communities outside of South Asian communities, whether we're dealing with the police department or the Family Justice Center, but also we educate the victims sometimes and kind of supporting them and saying, hey, did you think about it this way? It's not okay that this is happening to you. And that's a big part of what we do as well. And does anyone have any questions about Awaaz and what we do? I know you.
Yes,
Yeah.
one kind of final question. Yeah. How can students or community members potentially get involved with your organization to help further support you guys?
Oh, what a wonderful question. We're always looking for volunteers, aren't we, since it is a volunteer-led organization. So we're always looking for volunteers, and please do reach out to any one of us. We're happy to have you on board. And even on our website, there is a link to sign up to be a volunteer. So everyone is welcome. We're always looking for people. Great question.
And I'll extend that question to the other folks that are here today. How can people get involved with the Family Justice Center or with American Gateways or the Peace Center? Please tell everyone how to be involved.
I have some pamphlets. They have numbers on them, and we also are very grateful for anybody that would like to volunteer or just get information, and I'll have them here for us.
Are any of y'all pre-law or going into law school? Because we do some internships at the DA's office and Family Justice Center. Oh, pre-law in law school? All right, there we go. Cool. And that's right. We do have social worker internships that are available at the Family Justice Center as well, and counseling internships. Maybe I should just give you the mic back. But anyway, if you want to get involved in the criminal justice system when you go to law school, and you'd like to consider, either going into prosecution or maybe even as a defense attorney, it might be valuable to learn this sort of stuff too. Then come intern at the DA's office. I did an internship in the human trafficking unit when I started, and it was super valuable. Strongly recommend it.
I'm a UTSA alumni, and I did my internship with the Bexar County District Attorney's Office back in '99, and then I was hired right off the bat. So please, come on.
So along with advocacy at Peace, we also do education and prevention work. And so we're always looking for volunteers and students to get involved. One of our big initiatives is called Green Dot, and it's a bystander intervention training. And so with that training, it looks at instances of domestic dating violence, sexual violence, stalking. When those situations arise, how can individuals help intervene in a way that feels comfortable for them? And so that's a training that we provide twice a month on Thursdays throughout the semester. And so we always encourage for students or anyone to attend the training. That way we can work together as a campus. And so those situations are red dots. We want to build a community to where we can be green dots and intervene in those situations. And we also have flyers over there on the table that you're welcome to take as well that have the information for Peace if you'd like to learn more information and to participate in our upcoming events.
Similar to Family Justice Center, we have legal internships as well. We also have non-legal internship opportunities for individuals who just want to do like communications or development. We always need help with graphic design. We're lawyers, we're not designers, so we need help with flyers and things that we get to the community. Interpreters, translators. We use Basecamp to get all of our. It's a project management software where we get all of our volunteers onboarded that way, and then if we have translations that come out of the detention centers we serve, we're in 3 different detention centers, 2 near San Antonio and 1 near Austin. And we have a lot of folks from all over the world, and we need a lot of help with translation. So that's some examples. I have QR code here. You can just go straight to our website, or you can go to our website and sign up to volunteer that way. I also have some handouts, and then if you have folks that you want to refer to our organization, I have just like a quick little business card that has information on how to get in contact with our Austin office, and then another one that has our other 2 locations, Waco and San Antonio, because they have different programs and referral processes, unfortunately. Yeah.
Oh, that's so complicated. That's what I've learned. That's what I'm taking away. It's so complicated. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor to questions. I know I've received some questions on index cards. If you want to change your mind and ask it yourself in person, Megan here has a microphone to go around the room, so please raise your hand if you have a question for any of our panelists today.
Hello, thank you for sharing such an important information. So my name is Shafali, and I'm working as a dietitian. And it was great to know so many factors that are involved in in domestic violence My concern is I've been working with a lot of bariatric surgeons over a decade, and on an average, I had at least a couple of patients, especially women, who were considering to go for bariatric surgery because they had been victims of domestic violence, with or without the support. So this is my question to whoever is involved in this organization is there anything that is done to counsel these people in terms of their food intake? Because either they have aversion towards what they eat, they binge eat, and it's affecting their health to an extent that they put their health into jeopardy, and they have to go through these kind of surgeries to help them at least start moving out, because they become immobile to a certain stage, and it becomes really difficult for them to get them back to healthy eating because they're far away from the mental stress, and which has affected their food intake. So has anything been done, or you have any plan that you would consider to help them even with their healthy intake?
I think when I can start, and then everyone can jump in. I think when it comes to interpersonal violence and domestic violence, there's so many factors that are at play that people are dealing with. And it's entirely possible that that may be one of them. And if it is, I'm sure they would get the help that they need down the road. That's usually not one of the first things that people are concerned about when there may be scarcity of food. They may not have availability of food. That may be something that's more pertinent to the population that we're dealing with. Where they're being manipulated and they don't have the finances to support themselves. Anyone else want to say anything else?
To just kind of chime in a little bit, like I stated, we have a food pantry, so we kind of focus on whether or not they're able to financially have access to food, to make sure that they're able to feed their family. When it comes to a lot of the kind of the manipulation and the control from the inner partner violence, a lot of times we rely heavily on counseling to see that they are getting that extra support, because a lot of those behaviors, the kind of, I call them kind of they're not the more dominant behaviors of family violence or inter-partner violence. It's not the punch, it's not the kick, it's the emotional aspects of the violence. A lot of that we do refer heavily on counseling to try to help them identify a lot of those behaviors and hopefully get them the support so that way they can get to a healthy point of their life to be able to advocate for themselves and make those decisions. So it's a little tricky when it comes to those types of abusive behaviors, because they, like I said, it's not as obvious to the eye as somebody that has been punched. It's manipulation, it's controlling, it's the damage that is to their self-esteem.
Very much for the presentation. Any other? How does the increasing visibility of the men also experiencing this form of violence, right? So what kind of differences do you see in the kind of the experiences of the men vis-a-vis the women, and in terms of the kind of assistance they require? Can you shed some more light on this?
So differences between how men, I guess, encounter these types of issues in the space of protective orders or in the case of domestic violence. So I would say that generally speaking, the vast majority of our victims in our cases are women. But when we do have male victim cases, it's a similar sort of issue. It's just in reverse from the normal situation. It's a pattern of control followed by violent action. And you see that across intimate partner relationships. The difficulties that they do have is there is some stigma that's associated with them reporting. Maybe they, feel like they should be tough about it. That's kind of the cultural aspect about male victims. And the violence against them can be just as deadly, but they do have some general idea that they're going to be stigmatized if they go forward. But we treat them just the way we would treat any victim who comes in. We listen to them. We determine whether or not there's a case that's actionable, and we provide them with services to help them get safety and get security.
I think in the context of immigration, obviously, is it a cisgendered relationship or not? And then, in terms of where we would refer, that obviously depends on that as well. But I see a lot of emotional harm, a lot of psychological abuse, and then I see a lot of stigma, obviously, from community members that they face as a result of being not a typical, whatever that means, survivor. And so I think a lot of my male clients don't feel comfortable reporting for a multitude of reasons. And they have a harder time expressing the harm and how the harm has impacted them. And so I find myself spending longer and with folks who are male survivors kind of understanding their story because they don't feel comfortable expressing it. And so, yeah, I've seen also immigration pushing back on male survivor cases because they maybe don't necessarily believe that they've been victimized because also bias, etc.
So at the Peace Center, we do have male survivors that come in for support. I think that because our services are completely confidential, our male students feel more comfortable coming to us and speaking with an advocate. We are working an ongoing initiative is how to engage more men on campus. And so part of that is how do we get more men engaged in providing the trainings that we have and to be at those events and be present. And so we are trying to work with our athletic departments and get involved in any way that we can with other organizations. That way that when we engage male students, if they have someone that they can relate to, it may make it easier for them to want to reach out and get that support that they need.
I will also add that I have noticed in my lifetime of working with victims of domestic violence that there has been a higher trend in men feeling empowered to come forward and also talk about the abuse. So I have noticed that over the time span of my career of working with victims.
We have a question over here. Oh, okay.
Hi, my question is for Natalia. Natalia, because I remember you speaking about how there's different ways victims and survivors can get copies of IDs if their abusers are withholding their IDs. Is it always safe to try to request USCIS for a replacement or copy of an ID if the abuser is withholding an ID? Like, say, I think there's some IDs that are dependent on on good faith marriage or something like that, like the conditional residential green card.
Yeah, I think the removal of conditions on a green card, or like if you have a conditional green card and you want to have permanent residency. So I think the only IDs you can request from USCIS are IDs relating to immigration. So that would be like a green card or a copy of a citizenship certificate, and there's a form you can fill out and submit to get that documentation. But in terms of I think the question was more about kind of passport, birth certificate from country of origin, and so that would be separate and apart from USCIS, and you would go to, to the respective consulate to try to advocate for the client there, or give power of attorney. So it's like a letter that basically gives somebody else the authority to go in home country if it's safe, depending on the circumstances, to request the documentation from there. The Austin Public Library, and I think San Antonio has this too, just started issuing identification documents to individuals, but there are still requirements in terms of ID that you have to present in order to be eligible. So that's another thing that we've referred folks to, especially for some of our homeless clients. But yeah, I don't know if that addresses your question, but yeah, of course. I'm happy to talk more after.
Question for each of the panelists. We've talked a lot about how we can support within the different systems when survivors are coming in for services. I'm curious how us as the broader community can also work from a little bit more of a macro and social change angle. What ways can we as a community help, not just directly by engaging with services, but in our everyday lives to help make systems in our country a more humane and receptive environment through our advocacy or through our policy. So I'd love to hear what would be one thing that each of you would say we could go out and do and support that would help survivors within your own context.
I can start with that. I really, really think it's important to listen, to be present and listen and believe someone and really listen and not try to before speaking, before sharing something about yourself or what you think, to really understand what the person is telling you. And after listening, ask, what can I do to help you? I think those are, that's just one place where we can start, and I'll pass it on.
I would say learning about organizations in your community, like Awaaz, that are helping the community directly, and just spending time. And I know everybody's busy and just kind of the rhythm of life, but if you pick one organization a year, let's say, and read about that organization and volunteer at that organization, if you have the privilege and capacity to be able to donate to that organization, because I think the services that are provided, I think almost all of them are free, and so I think that's important. Access is huge, and I think if you know who is serving your community, you're going to be able to better help that individual who may come to you for assistance. And so I think just having a roadmap in your brain of organizations that it can just be something that you're interested in, right? So you want to help survivors of violence, learn all the organizations, make it a project to learn all the organizations that serve your community in that capacity. I think that's huge. I think caring about the work is huge. I think, a lot of us, if you're a direct service provider, you're just kind of in the tunnel zone and you are just doing the work and helping the folks, and sometimes you forget to look up and be like, oh, there are other folks around me who are also doing this work. So I think it means a lot, I know, to me when I have community members just be curious about what I do and wanting to support our work. That makes me feel like I can continue to do this for 14 more years, so.
Okay, one thing looking at you, and a lot of the questions today have been directed to this idea of, there are lots of services that are available to people who are in these situations if they don't report. But to the extent that's possible, if you're encountering folks that are going through these types of situations that are on the fence about whether or not they're going to report these things to the police, encourage them to report. Me as a prosecutor, if I go to court and I'm trying to prove that this incident has occurred, having a third party who's independently reviewed the facts makes my ability to prove that in court so much easier. So, to the extent that it's possible, and to the extent that you can encourage somebody to do that, if they're going through these types of things, reporting is so valuable.
I would just like to add kindness, just being kind, because we don't know who's going through this situation. A lot of times it's so unnoticed, and it's not going to necessarily look like somebody that's walking around with a black eye. A lot of times it could be the stress, the lack of sleep, the fear. People develop survival mechanisms in the relationship. We don't know what anybody's going through. So it's just having that bit of kindness to the person and giving them that grace. And not being judgmental about what their situation is, whether they're going to go back to that relationship or not, because it's just planting seeds. All we can do as providers is give them the information, provide that that kindness, and hopefully that the person will make that decision to feel empowered and want to advocate for themselves and their family. Because once again, at the end of the day, the last thing that we want to do is take that person's voice away after they've already been traumatized in so many different ways.
I would say to just start by believing. If someone comes to you and shares a situation with you, it can be hard for them to come forward and want to share that. So to start by believing them with what they have to say and meeting that person where they're at. Because the healing and the journey isn't linear. And so having that patience and understanding and knowing that they have that open communication, I feel it makes a big impact.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, all the points are extremely valuable and valid. And for those of us in this room who don't know what Awaaz means, it means voice. So let's speak about this, let's continue talking about it without judgment and empowering survivors.
Well, I don't know about you, but I learned a ton this morning. Thank you so much to our speakers. I do want to be mindful of time, so please, let's give a round of applause. I believe most of them will be staying at least for a little while, so if you have additional questions, I know I wasn't able to get to everyone, please feel free to approach them. They're all wonderful people, as you can tell. I also want to give a round of applause to my co-facilitator, Anabella. At this time, we will have lunch until 12:30. You're welcome to take from our spread out there. There's a lot of vegetarian options as well, because I know there are a lot of vegetarians here, so please help yourself. And panels, I have a gift for you as well. So thank you so much. Please help yourself. I do apologize if you are waiting for vegetarian options. We have another delivery coming because there was a little bit of a glitch with the order delivery, but it is on its way.
Okay, we need to finish.